News Talk 610 AM and 102.1 FM. KVNU.
KVNU News Time is 4:05. I'm Bill Walter with this news update brought to you by Northern Steel Buildings. Firefighters quickly extinguished a wildfire in Providence Canyon that was allegedly started by target shooters. The fire was reported about 4 p.m. Saturday and was quickly contained within several hours. According to emergency radio traffic, the fire was suspected to have started by target shooters. The road into the canyon was closed while several fire departments created a containment line around the fire and extinguished hotspots. Cache County Fire Marshal Jason Wen confirmed that target shooting was being investigated as the possible cause of the blaze. The fire was on national forest land where target shooting is permitted with certain restrictions. Those restrictions include a ban on tracer ammunition and all exploding targets, such as those containing tannerite. Targets made from objects that break apart are also prohibited. The fire burned about a quarter of an acre of mostly grass and brush. No structures were threatened. KVNU News Time is 4:06. KVNU weather for tonight. Becoming mostly clear tonight, low in the upper 50s. Northwest winds 10 to 20 miles an hour early this evening. And then sunny to partly cloudy and warm tomorrow, mid-90s. Mid-90s on Wednesday as well. We've topped off so far at 90 degrees. Temperatures come down since then. It's currently 86 at KVNU. KVNU weather brought to you by Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology. Turn life up. Schedule a free hearing evaluation with Dr. Paul Daines at Cache Valley Hearing and Audiology. Their web address, cachehearing.com.
A building is just a building until it's your building. It's where you work, where you create, where you store your valuable equipment. You take pride in your building, so make sure it's built right and built to last. Northern Steel Buildings will guide you from concept to construction. For your commercial, agricultural, or industrial steel building, visit northernsteelbuilding.com to see their quality work or call 435-677-7300. Northern Steel Buildings. Value from concept to construction.
KVNU News Time is 4:07. The Utah Department of Corrections has transferred 2,464 inmates from the Utah State Prison in Draper to the new Utah State Correctional Facility in Salt Lake City. Governor Caucus shared in a social media post on Friday that over the past 5 days, incarcerated individuals were moved by bus, van, or car with consideration for safety, security, and medical-related needs. Caucus said the new facility features uncompromised security and safety, more daylight, and greater access to programming opportunities that will help the incarcerated re-enter society. He said the transfer required tremendous forethought and coordination and required efforts from multiple agencies. Caucus said that ensuring a safe and secure move to the new state-of-the-art facility was a monumental task, and he wanted to congratulate everyone involved on a job well done. The transfer came as demolition plans continued for the 600-acre site of the prison in Draper, which will be rebranded to The Point. The new project is expected to bring business and affordable housing to that area. And a severe thunderstorm warning was issued for parts of Utah on Sunday, although in the Cache Valley, we mostly just got clouds and wind with the storminess that rolled in. But some areas reported heavy rain, and some flights were delayed at the Salt Lake City airport. Thunderstorms were not the only weather event in Utah on Sunday. It was also when Salt Lake City reached a tie for its all-time highest temperature of 107 degrees. KVNU News Time is 4:09. For more details on these and other stories, visit CacheValleyDaily.com.
Keeping you informed. News Talk KVNU, 610 AM, 102.1 FM, and online at 610kvnu.com.
It's true. Many of us spend more time thinking about what's for dinner than thinking about retirement. But if you think your retirement needs deserve more attention, Edward Jones agrees, and they can help. Together, they'll give your long-term retirement strategy the attention it deserves. Stop by your local Edward Jones office, one of 7 locations in Cache Valley. Edward Jones, making sense of investing. Member SIPC.
When you struggle with low thyroid or autoimmune challenges, everyday activities can be hard to enjoy. Get more out of life with Red River Health and Wellness. Founded by Dr. Josh Red, chiropractic physician, Red River Health and Wellness is committed to your well-being. With a focus on non-pharmaceutical practices, they help patients manage autoimmune and thyroid conditions, including Hashimoto disease. Improve your quality of life. Call Red River Health and Wellness today, 855-55-RIVER, with offices in Logan, South Jordan, Springville, and St. George.
There's a lot going on right now, and broadcasters are on the ground covering all of it, bringing you the weather, the traffic, and breaking news, all while entertaining you 24 hours a day. Someone needs to tell you what's going on around the world and in our hometowns, and that someone is us. We are free radio. We are always there. We are broadcasters. Visit wearebroadcasters.com or text radio to 52886 to learn more. Furnished by NAB and this station.
For the people.
We are waiting with bated breath for news from the Cache Republican Party meeting an executive committee tonight.
With Jason Williams.
And I'm really excited about this next segment. We have 2 guests here in studio. We're going to talk about something that we've talked about many times here on the show, but from a bit of a different angle.
Weekday afternoons from 4 till 6 on News Talk KVNU, 610 AM and 102 FM.
Welcome to KVN News for the people. Monday, July 18th. I'm Jason Williams, Bill Walter here in the studio as well. And let's start off here with a little lecture. How about that? You heard the news.
Sure.
You heard the
I love to get lectures.
I know everybody enjoys it, right? No, you heard the news story during the break there, as Bill read it, that fire crews had to spend some time, and every time they go out, put their lives at risk, battling a blaze at the mouth of Providence Canyon over the weekend. And it is, at this point, they believe that the fire was started by target shooters. Folks, seriously, it's like a couple of months that you have to hold off on this kind of thing to not start a wildfire that leads to, or could lead to, at very least, evacuations and destruction of property, at worst, death, for a firefighter, for a resident, for you as the starter of the fire. I don't know. It just it blows me away sometimes that it's too much to ask that we just hold off on certain things for a brief period of time. Save it for the fall or something. I don't know. That's kind of hard to say because wildfire season lasted until November a couple of years ago. So
yeah, it was late. I remember, smoky skies in October?
Yeah.
A couple of years back.
That's honestly, It is a long wildfire season. I get that, and it's fun to go out and do these things. I get that too, but honestly, it's just not worth it at all. It's just hold off for a bit. There's no reason to be going out and doing these things. Accidents are going to happen. It's unavoidable. There was a big fire in Saratoga Springs several years ago that was started by a parked car. A person had driven a long distance, and the car was, as warm as a car gets, driving a significant amount of time, more than 10 minutes or so, and they pulled into a parking area that was designated. It wasn't, they didn't just pull in some random spot. It was a random parking area, and they just happened to stop over a patch of extremely dry, tall grass. And that was enough. And that fire burned for almost a week, I think, before they got that one under control. outside of Saratoga Springs there. So, those types of things, accidents are going to happen. You can't account for every potential scenario where you could be the cause of a wildfire. But what we can do is we cannot do things that we know have started wildfires before, like target shooting on a dry hillside. So come on, everybody.
If you were on Family Feud and the top 5 causes of wildfires,
yeah,
I'm sure that would be in the top 5.
Target
top
shooting
3 or whatever
is right up there, and it seems like there's one every summer. And again, it's one of those things that you can just not do for a couple of months. You'll be fine. You'll have plenty of other times in the year to do it. And just July and August, that's all we're asking. Maybe September this year. But yeah, it's frustrating to hear these things. And whenever I hear about them, and this maybe for you, Bill, is the same. But we here on the show, we speak with people like Jason Wynn and even members of the city and county fire crews individually, and so you meet these people and you get to know them, and you hear a bit more about what it is like being a firefighter. Representative Casey Snyder has also done a lot to educate me on what it means to be on a wildfire team, and this is not this is not safe work. This is even a fire that was started and out as quickly as that one was over the weekend at the mouth of Providence Canyon there. Every single fire is a risk to the firefighters themselves. Men and women who were, in some cases here in Cache Valley, still volunteer teams. Every single fire, they are putting themselves at risk in one way or another. Even if the fire is out quickly. So just keep that in mind before you go do something that, again, like target shooting, that you absolutely know based on your entire life of news stories through the summer is known to start wildfires. Just think that one through a little bit before you go out and do it. So there you have it. It was a nice lecture, but still a lecture. Because, again, these are things that you can just avoid for a couple of months. And at least do your part to reduce the risk of a wildfire that has us all evacuating our homes and watching our personal belongings burn, and worse, maybe losing a loved one, or the loved ones of a fire crew member losing a loved one because you wanted to target shoot right now, not 2 months from now. So, yeah, there's my lecture. I'll keep it simple and sweet like that. It has been a pretty hot day out there. At least it feels. I know we've actually had higher temperatures already this year.
Yeah.
Than right now.
Well, it's been to 90. And relative. Well, I mean, Salt Lake was 107 yesterday.
Yeah.
A new tied the all-time record.
That's right, for a July temperature out there at the airport. And man, It's been, as far as wildfires go here in Utah, we've been lucky so far. There have been some significant size fires so far, but they've been, controlled and in areas. I noticed over the weekend a portion of I-15 was closed. I'm spacing where this was now. It was south of here, Utah County area somewhere, but they closed a portion of I-15 for a few minutes. Because of the risk of a fire jumping the freeway there. That one was out pretty quickly. The weekend before, of course, we had the canyon closed here in Cache Valley for the fire on the hillside there at the mouth of Sardine Canyon. That was caused by a car breakdown. A car with engine trouble pulled off the side of the road.
I was told a car pulled off because a little kid had to relieve himself.
Oh, it wasn't engine trouble.
This is what I've heard, and so I don't know.
That's all it took.
Secondhand.
Yeah. But that's all it took, that car leaving the roadway and crossing some dry grass.
Like we were late Saturday afternoon when we had no business being up there trying to do this 95 plus degree heat. But Left Hand Fork, Blacksmith Fork, we were going to go for a hike, but to get there, you had left-hand fork gets pretty darn narrow as it's going along. And there was this, several trucks and whatever coming towards us, including one that was hauling a trailer that was about a mile long. I don't know what they were thinking, taking that trailer up there, but we had to get off the road as much as possible. And, you back up into some, a little bit of a grassy area. And then the thought crossed my mind, this is how easily a wildfire starts off something like this. So,
yeah. But
I don't think we didn't start any fires or anything, so I'm happy for that.
No, but it does remind you of how easy it could be to start one. That's I did something just this summer that I shouldn't have done. I have a pasture mower, and just mowing some weeds. If you cut them down before they go to seed, then they don't come back. But yet you wait until they're tall enough to mow. It's a little easier, and as I'm going along there, it was nearly dusk, and I'd put a hose out just in case. But as I was going along, I could see those sparks when the mower would hit the occasional rock, and I'm surrounded by just tinder, grass that's been dry for over a month now, and so I just shut the mower off, and that's all the mowing that's going to happen this summer. But
you were thinking, I'd rather sleep in my own bed tonight rather than a jail cell. So
it's in a location where I was more going to be putting the neighbors at risk than me, and you just it would be so easy to be, and at very least, do you want to be on the news in that way? Do these target shooters on the weekend, is that? Do you want to be that person on the news that, wildfire started, homes evacuated? Here's the person that you can all thank.
Yeah.
I still feel bad for that.
Tell your lawyers about. Yeah.
I people argue with me about this, but I feel bad for the man who, had thousands of dollars of fines later, and I believe at least a brush with jail time. The man that was burning weeds, was it last year? Or 2 years ago, we had that big fire just a little bit north of Cedar City, burned for weeks. They just couldn't get control of it.
Or was that in the mountains east of Cedar? I can't remember.
Oh, yeah, it was.
Right.
It was to the east.
He just decided to burn some weeds off, innocent enough. But
yeah, that happens here in Cache Valley every spring.
Yeah.
And it was determined that he was negligent in that he one, shouldn't have been burning where he was, and two, was burning in a way that is not the way you do it, basically. And he ended up, his picture was on the evening news there for a couple nights in a row. So at very least, you'd think you'd want to avoid that, being that person, that kind of famous. But on the serious side, you are, going out and target shooting right now on a dry hillside, especially, you've got other options. You don't even have to not target shoot entirely for the next couple of months. You can go to the range. There are some very safe places to do that. In fact, I believe, I'm not certain about this, but I believe it's a bit of a drive, I know, but I believe the hillside range there in Huntsville, they've actually completed they were nearly the cause of a big wildfire several years ago, and so they put some money into their hillside range there, and they've turned it into basically a fireproof zone. There's nothing anywhere nearby that could catch fire, and they've even put up some retaining walls for hot bits that might flip off of this or that. And so they've been responsible about it, and I know that's a bit of a drive, but there's an option for you rather than the mouth of Providence Canyon. But yeah, let's just think some of this stuff through. I don't want to have to be evacuated. Your neighbors don't want to have to be evacuated, and even worse, lose property, life, limb, loved ones, because you decided in July to go do something that again is pretty prone to start wildfires. So let's not. 753-5868. On the other side, Salt Lake Tribune columnist Robert Gehrke looks at some election data from the primaries and concludes that the caucus convention system needs to die. We'll talk about why he's saying this today after this.
Cowboy up in a new Ram truck. That's right, it's time for the famous West Motor Rodeo Day sale. This is the time of year that West Motor becomes famous for deals on trucks. And if we don't have the exact setup that you want, come in and we'll help you build your truck exactly how you want it. Enjoy a lifetime powertrain warranty and our highly coveted West Motor rodeo jackets.
And wow, they look sharp.
We'll even throw in a couple free tickets to the famous Preston Night Rodeo.
Now that's how the West was won. WestMotorCompany.com.
Loveland Living Planet Aquarium takes us outside our everyday lives into a world of discovery. It's a chance to explore our innate curiosity, discover animals from around the world, and experience the all-new outdoor plaza and eco. More to explore at Loveland Living Planet Aquarium. Reserve your visit at thelivingplanet.com.
We may be thousands of miles apart, but we can still connect. And when we do, we make things better. At Child Fund, we connect children all around the world with what they need to grow up healthy, educated, and safe. Together, we co-create connections that help millions of children who live in poverty worldwide, and their families, and their communities, and you. Join us. Together, we can make the world a better place. 2 small worlds at a time. Visit childfund.org to learn more.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. Today in the Salt Lake Tribune, columnist, former journalist turned columnist, Robert Gehrke. Gehrke was the legislative guy, the political guy at the Tribune for years. There's not anyone that knows, honestly, that knows politics in Utah more. And he's since, after they did some reshuffling there when they became a nonprofit and things like that, he since moved from beat reporting. He was, again, the guy that covered the legislature for the Salt Lake Tribune. He and an entire team of people, actually, but he headed it up for years. He's turned columnist and has a weekly column there at the Tribune. And his column is today basically calling for now, of course, this is up for a party to decide, so there will be no legislative vote or anything like that. So it's nothing like that. But he's saying in his column that it's time for everyone to just agree and move on from the caucus convention system in general, but specifically when it comes to choosing candidates. And he cites, he's got, pretty significant evidence to cite here, which is, in short, the outcome of the primaries in contrast with the outcome of the caucus convention delegate votes when it comes to preferred candidates. And he cites the 1st Congressional District race here in northern Utah. That was between the winner of the race and expected next representative for the district in our federal delegation. That is, of course, you may have heard of him, Blake Moore. And he had challengers, Republican candidates Tina Cannon and Andrew Badger. And at the convention system, or the convention vote, where delegates, just over, I think it was 3,700 delegates, Republican Party delegates, got to weigh in on that convention vote. Moore landed only 40%. And which, if you read that, you'd say, oh, this is a weak candidate. It was 41% almost, of the delegate vote in this year's GOP convention. And then just basically mopped the floor with Badger and Cannon in the primary when rank-and-file registered Republicans get to weigh in. Representative John Curtis, Gehrke also cites, in the 3rd Congressional District, he only got 45% of Republican delegate support, so he was sent into a primary, as Moore was here in District 1. In District 3, Curtis, the incumbent, was sent into a primary with Chris Herod, who is a former state lawmaker turned professional candidate, as far as I can tell. This guy has run every cycle for everything. And just, there's sometimes I know Chris from his time as a state lawmaker, and Chris, I just sometimes want to say, it just, I don't know why they don't like you, but find a new shtick, man. But he got points with the delegates, and then in the general election, when rank and file registered Republicans, not just these 4,000-ish delegates get to weigh in, Curtis mopped the floor with Herod. More with Badger and Cannon. In fact, Curtis cleaned up with about 70% of registered Republicans in the primary vote on the primary ballot. So Gehrke goes on to cite a lot of other races from around the state, including there's State Representative Melissa Garf Ballard, Jeff Stenquist, Rep. Ray Ward. They all finished behind, losing, basically, to their challengers in the caucus convention vote. Their challengers being more conservative. These are three moderate Republicans in the state legislature. More conservative opponents beat them at the convention and then lost handily to them in the primary vote, again, when it opens up to just registered Republicans in general. Representative Stephen Handy, who didn't collect signatures, 12-year incumbent of the legislature, didn't collect signatures for some reason. He actually lost to Trevor Lee, and then Gehrke reminds everyone that Lee was just a week later embroiled in a scandal when he said some moderately racist and homophobic things in a podcast, and even attracted the ire of fellow Senate Republicans who are now pressuring Handy to mount a write-in campaign to stop Trevor Lee from becoming a member of the legislature. Senator Todd Weiler, a Republican from the Bountiful area, kind of was the first I saw to voice that, saying that Lee is unfit for state legislative office with some of his antics, and wants the incumbent who lost in the primary or at the convention and didn't collect signatures, so didn't get to go to a primary to battle it out with Lee. They're trying to get him to mount a write-in campaign to stop Lee. So Gehrke takes all this and more. If you'd like to read it, he goes through a lot of different races around the state. But he basically says, this is, how many times do we need to see this, is the question that he's asking. And he's asking it because there is a proposed bill that will be coming up in the legislative session that after the courts threw out a provision that so let's walk this back a little bit more. So you have Count My Vote in its original format. It looks like it's going to be successful. Count My Vote would have basically done away with the caucus convention system entirely as a candidate nominating process. It would have said, that signature gathering was the route here in the state of Utah. That's how nominations are done. The parties are welcome to still have their own convention and delegates, but it won't have any bearing that by default candidates will be on the ballot for collecting signatures or to collect signatures, and that was going to work. Some numbers had been seen, some polling had been done, and even lawmakers and the governor at the time, Governor Herbert, were convinced that the Count My Vote ballot initiative was going to succeed. So they sat down with Count My Vote and said, how about if you don't entirely kill the caucus convention system with this ballot initiative, if you'll fold the signature gathering for the ballot initiative, we will do this legislatively. And they came up with Senate Bill 54, the Count My Vote Compromise, as it came to be known, which basically did almost everything the Count My Vote ballot initiative intended to do, but threw some provisions in there to preserve or protect the caucus convention system as a nominating route too. Like dealing with things like duality. What if you have someone collect signatures and get on the ballot as a Republican, but then at convention there was another Republican nominated by the delegates? What happens then? So the state had to kind of lay out the rules of what would happen at that point. Short version, they'd both be on the ballot, but anyway. So that was the compromise. So I don't think I'm not saying it was a great compromise. I'm saying it did almost everything Count My Vote was set to do as a ballot initiative, and then it did some things that made people worried about the caucus convention system's future, which they should be, honestly. Made them feel better. So there's a bill coming up now in the 2023 legislative session that would lower the threshold for getting on the ballot through the signature gathering route. And there's a reason this is coming up. It's not arbitrary. It has nothing to do with the most recent elections. It actually has been pending for a long time. And it stems from a court throwing out. So there was originally a provision in the Count My Vote compromise, Senate Bill 54, that said that when the signature thresholds were that set the signature thresholds. And when they were set, it was assumed that unaffiliated voters would be able to sign these petitions to put candidates on either party's ballot. And then the courts ruled against that. The courts said, no, the parties are right in one thing here. So remember, the Republican Party here in Utah was trying to kill the Count My Vote compromise, Senate Bill 54, entirely through these lawsuits. And the judges were tossing that left and right. So it made it through 3 different levels of the judicial system and finally the state Supreme Court, where the courts had basically said again and again, no, the state can do this. The state can design election law. It's what the state is constitutionally given the power to do. So the parties can't stop the state from having a signature route, but at the same time, the state can't force the parties to accept the nomination of a candidate in which people not registered with the party were voting. So the courts said it would be unconstitutional to allow, as Count My Vote originally wanted, for unaffiliated voters to weigh in on closed primaries. So if the Republican Party has a closed primary, for example, where they want only registered Republicans weighing in, this Senate Bill 54 compromise, and taken from the original Count My Vote ballot initiative, would have allowed unaffiliated voters to weigh in on that. And the Republican Party, that was their one win. The state Republican Party's one win in court was the court said, yeah, that you can't do. The state can't force a private party to accept the nominated candidate in which people not registered with that party were voting. So the response to that then was to say, okay, well, so now the thresholds are too high. If unaffiliated voters can't weigh in, then the threshold for getting on the ballot as a candidate is now too high. And everyone agrees, but it's taken 3 years now after waiting for all the lawsuits to finish and all that. So coming up in the legislative session will be a bill that makes it actually easier for an individual to collect signatures and get on the ballot as a registered Republican, a registered Democrat, registered United Utah Party. We'll pretend that they are actually things here. We have the Independent American Party. We have the Libertarian Party, the Constitution Party, not to be taken seriously. The Green Party, also not to be taken seriously. So I'm talking the 2 major parties. No offense to the United Utah Party, too, but my attitude towards the third party is once you start taking yourself seriously, I'll take you seriously. And you do that by showing you can fundraise, recruit candidates, and win an election here or there. So far, third parties have not had success with that in Utah. So talking about mainly the 2 major parties, Republicans and Democrats here in Utah, it would make it easier for a person to collect signatures and be on the ballot as a Republican candidate or a Democratic Party candidate. And that bill will be coming up in 2023. Gehrke writes in his column that this just needs to happen because he admits and is advocating for, he says this will be the final nail in that caucus convention system. And if you look at the election, how the primary turned out when registered Republicans in general got to vote versus when the more dedicated, more conservative, and predominantly male caucus delegates got to vote, the results were vastly different. And Gehrke said it's easier to believe that rank-and-file registered Republicans weighing in the tens of thousands throughout the state represent the state far better than 3,700 men who are GOP delegates who went to caucus and voted there, which numerically, Gehrke's right. If you want to talk about representation, tens of thousands of registered Republicans is a lot more than 3,700 GOP delegates. And Gehrke says, the 2 coming out with so vastly different results again and again the last few years. He says it's time to lower the threshold, make it easier for people to collect signatures because that discourages people without a lot of money from running. And then just call the caucus convention system dead. I've linked to the column on our Facebook page. If you'd like to weigh in, I'd love to hear from our listeners on this and how this might affect county party politics as well would be in question. What do you think? 753-5868. We'll be back right after these headlines with KVNU's Bill Walter.
Thank you, Jason. KVNU News Time is 4:39, and the news is brought to you by U&I Furniture. A wrongful death lawsuit filed after an 11-year-old autistic boy was left in a hot car while under the watch of a care facility in Utah has been settled. KSL-TV reports the lawsuit filed against Roost Services and some of its employees in April stemmed from the July 2021 death of Joshua Hansey, who was left in a car for nearly 3 hours in American Fork as temperatures reached the mid-90s. A police lieutenant told reporters at the time that the car's windows were up, the doors were closed, and the engine was off. Terms of the settlement were not released. The Idaho Republican Party has rejected adding language to their platform to allow an abortion to save the life of the mother. The party rejected the change to its existing platform during its 3-day convention that wrapped up Saturday. The platform does not have the force of law, but states the party's position it wants Republicans in elected office to follow. The overturning of Roe v. Wade by the U.S. Supreme Court last month triggered a 2020 Idaho law banning all abortions except in cases of reported rape or incest or to protect the mother's life. That law is being challenged in court. And 6 of the 31 members of a white supremacist group who were arrested near a northern Idaho Pride event last month have pleaded not guilty to misdemeanor charges of conspiracy to riot. The Patriot Front members were arrested June 11th with riot gear after a tipster reported seeing people load up into a U-Haul at a hotel parking lot in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. 6 members of the group made court appearances today. John Lewis, a George Washington University researcher who specializes in homegrown violent extremism, said Patriot Front is a white supremacist neo-Nazi group whose members perceive black Americans, Jews, and LGBTQ people as enemies. KVNU News Time is 4:42.
U&I Furniture wants to wish you a happy and safe Independence Day, 4th of July, and Pioneer Day, July 24th. Both holidays are good reminders of our freedoms and our heritage. During this time, U&I features their American-made brand names. Chairs by Southern Motion, Best, Franklin, and Lane, Speed Queen appliances and therapeutic mattresses, and Legend brand TV consoles and entertainment centers. Enjoy your summer. And when you're ready for great name furniture and appliances, visit the place where there's always a better buy. U&I Furniture, downtown Logan.
KVNU weather for tonight becoming mostly clear, low in the upper 50s. Northwest winds 10 to 20 miles an hour early in the evening. Sunny to partly cloudy Tuesday, high temperature in the mid-90s. Partly cloudy Tuesday night, mostly sunny, mid-90s on Wednesday. It's been to 90 degrees, and it's 90 right now at KVNU. KVNU weather brought to you by Whole Tree Care. By now, your trees and shrubs have new growth everywhere. If your yard is out of control, call Whole Tree Care. That's Hull Tree Care. They trim, shape, and remove trees and shrubs and clean it up, too. Ask about their radio discount. Call 760-6587. For more details on these and other stories, visit CashValleyDaily.com. Let's check Wall Street now with Edward Jones.
This is Cheryl, bringing you the Daily Financial Market Report on behalf of Jeff Olson and Edward Jones. Small cap stocks were the relative leaders today, with the larger names down almost 1%. From a sector level, energy stocks were one of the few sectors in the green, up more than 1.5%, as demand forecasts rise slightly and supply stays tight as oil producers have little excess capacity to increase production. Markets have been volatile this year, with the VIX at elevated levels as investors gauge quickly evolving economic and inflationary data. The Fed has been on a path of rate hikes and balance sheet reductions to curb price increases, which has sent stocks into a bear market as investors price in a future recession. However, the Fed has said it still sees a path to a soft landing, a scenario where inflation comes under control without the economy tipping into a recession. Edward Jones thinks key indicators like the labor market and consumer spending remain strong, but headwinds are growing and the risk of a recession is increasing. U.S. equities closed lower today. The Dow closed down 216 points at 31,072. The NASDAQ closed down 92 points at 11,360. The S&P 500 closed down 32 points at 3,831. And in the bond market, 10-year Treasury yields are trading at 2.97% higher by 0.04 percentage points. This has been today's financial market report, brought to you on behalf of Edward Jones, member SIPC, and financial advisor Jeff Olson, serving individual investors with personalized attention and financial advice at 580 North Main in Logan. If you would like additional information, please contact our branch office at 435-787-8170. Daily commentary is also located on our website at edwardjones.com.
Hey Utah, ready for your summer adventure? A new GMC will get you wherever the road goes and beyond. Save now on every new rugged Murdoch GMC in stock during the Drive Into Summer Sales event. At Murdoch GMC Chevrolet Buick Cadillac of Logan, we've got the lineup to get you anywhere with confidence. Drive home a new 2022 Sierra 1500, Acadia, or Terrain with 0% for 3 years. When you walk through our doors, you feel like family. At Murdoch Chevrolet Buick GMC Cadillac in Logan or online at murdochchevroletlogan.com. We are professional grade.
Call 866-628-3065 or see dealer for complete details. Offer expires 7/31/22.
Who do you turn to if you want to change out your wood or pellet stove? Advanced Fireplace and Stove. They were voted the gold medalist for Best of Northern Utah for the second year in a row in the fireplace retrofit category. Be ready when the government's next wood and pellet replacement incentives pop up. Advanced Fireplace can help you navigate the paperwork. For more information, call Advanced Fireplace and Stove, 752-7272. Online, advancedfireplaceandstove.com.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. Listener asked a question during the news there that is really a great question. Listener said, that he'd only scanned the news and coverage of Count My Vote and the Caucus convention system, the debate on which should be the way candidates are nominated. For those just tuning in again, Robert Gehrke has a column at the Tribune today saying, once again, we have an primary election cycle that's just played out that shows how out of touch the caucus convention system is. And he cites as examples from the congressional district races here in District 1 and District 3, John Curtis and Blake Moore, respectively, and the several legislative races along the Wasatch Front. The difference between where delegates wanted things to go and where the rest of Republicans wanted things to go. Gehrke says when you've got tens of thousands of Republicans weighing in via their ballots, and then you have 3,700 Republicans weighing in via their convention vote in the form of those 3,700 delegates, and you're getting two wildly different outcomes, you should default to the larger group if you want to know where the true representation is. And he says because of that, the convention system needs to go away. And it's not going to, so he says one way the state can just encourage people to start ignoring it and the results of the convention vote for nominees is to lower the threshold for gathering signatures to get on the ballot. So that's Gehrke's argument. That bill's coming up in 2023, whether Gehrke signs on in his column or not. It's already been proposed and will be debated at the legislative in the legislative session in early 2023. So that's Gehrke's argument. While describing that and asking listeners what they think, a listener emailed and said, what's the history of all of this? How did we get here? And that actually is an interesting read. I would suggest, I've linked, after getting the question, I've linked to some great writing by a couple of well-known political scientists, John Sides and Lee Drutman are two of them. You can find others, but these are two that I always found to be pretty thoughtful in their writing. And they've written books, but they also write daily essays on Substack and Medium and things like that about political science. Both of them have some great explainers, and Sides actually goes so far as to list and go into detail about the pros and cons of a primary voting system, open primaries versus closed. He gets into all of that. And a caucus convention system where you have elected delegates and a much smaller number of them go to a convention and speak for everyone. And he lists the pros and cons, and it's an interesting history. The shortest way to answer this listener's question on how we got here, though, if you mean the history of where the caucus convention system came from in the first place, basically the caucus convention system stems from a time when it was just impossible for a lot of people to weigh in. It was physically impossible. Travel times were hours, travel times were the whole day. To go to a convention in Salt Lake City for a political party at a certain point, you leave in the morning and you get there in the afternoon. So this was so much the case that the conventions were never held until the evening, and people were given a place to stay to drive home the next day because it's a long trip by horse and buggy. So originally that's how old some of this is. That's the theory or the philosophy, if you will, behind a caucus convention system is that, look, it's impossible for everyone to go. And even if you made it even easier, everyone that has an opinion, it still isn't going to go. And so what we'll do is we'll have neighborhoods, which were at the time much smaller. We'll have neighborhoods get together, and that's called the neighborhood caucus. Neighborhoods get together, and they choose a single individual to represent them at the convention. So the theory behind that is neighbors know their neighbors, and everybody has a chance to kind of speak and get a feel for where everyone's coming from. And then a few people step forward and say, I'm nominating myself as a candidate to be a delegate to represent you at the state convention. And then a vote happens. And the idea behind that, again, was that neighborhoods could do this. They knew each other well enough. They could elect someone. So, and to me, at a time, that made a lot of sense. But the argument now, and I think it's worth considering, at least, the argument now is that things have changed quite a bit. With electronic voting that has happened at multiple conventions by both major parties now here in Utah, to the ability to communicate to people dates and times more easily, frequently, and in a way that is going to encourage them to show up and vote in a primary. Mail-in balloting, where a registered voter just gets a ballot mailed to them, they fill it out and send it back. I mean, we still only saw about 40% turnout, which is an improvement. So don't get me wrong. Turnout's going up every single year here in Cache Valley since mail-in voting started more than 10 years ago. So that's great. But still, it's only 40%. So it's still not the majority of people weighing in, even via their ballots in the primary. But 40% of registered Republicans is tens of thousands of people more than the number of delegates the state Republican Party has in total. And not all of them showed up for convention. About 3,700, I was told, were there, roughly. So out of, I think, 5,500. So you're looking at 40% either way, but 40% of tens of thousands of voters versus 40% of 5,000 delegates total. Yeah, you see what I'm getting at? Or 6,000 delegates total. What I'm getting at is that if you're looking for a system that's representative, I think to answer the listener's question, where did all this come from? I think there was a day and time when this, further on down the chain representative democracy type stuff, because that's, when we elect a state lawmaker, we're doing the same thing. We're electing someone to go speak for us as an entire region of the state via House districts and Senate districts at the state legislative level to go down and speak for us at the legislative session. And the theory is that through your vote, you've weighed in on, and the majority wins out, of course, on who goes and speaks for you. You're, of course, limited by who files to run as a candidate in the first place. So it's not a perfect example of the same thing, but it's similar. And so I think this worked at a time for nominating candidates, which is probably the most important thing that caucus conventions did and do, is choose the candidates their party's going to send into the general election. And this was also happening at a time when Utah wasn't so solidly one party. So, yeah, it made total sense. Then, does it now? I think that's a fair question. We're no longer in the day and age where it's difficult for people to be a part of this like it was. It's not a 6-hour horse and buggy ride. It's a relatively short drive on a Saturday afternoon, and even then, like I said, during the pandemic, both major parties at least experimented with electronic voting and more. Also, that kind of shoots down the whole idea. If that's what the party is doing to make it easier for people to become delegates and go down and vote at the convention, all that stuff's already happening when it comes to registered voters and general elections and primary elections. So there's just a sort of a dumb moment there as well with that. So to me, I think there was a time when the caucus convention system made sense and was preferable. I don't know that time, that now is still that time. The argument, pros and cons again, the argument for that is that with a general populace or general registered voters nominating process, someone with enough money can buy that because they can, if they've got enough money, they can run enough radio ads, TV ads, all of that, and that works. Get them nominated, right? Whereas someone without a lot of money couldn't do that. Well, to be honest with you, the same thing's already happening in the caucus convention system, too. It's a lot cheaper. The final dollar amount for the candidate spending the most money is much smaller, but they're still buying votes. They take delegates to dinner. They buy them T-shirts. They take them to lunch. They show up at their houses, wine and dine them, schmooze. The same type of thing is happening. I don't think the caucus convention system is immune to that type of thing. It's just, like I said, it's a smaller dollar amount, sure, but it's still happening. So to me, it's a wash in that arena. And so in the end, for me, it comes down to, well, in which system are more people weighing in? And that's a no-brainer. It's when people are mailing their ballots back in a primary as registered voters of that party. Or in the case of the Utah Democratic Party, anybody, because their primaries are open. Far more people, tens of thousands more, even here in northern Utah, weighed in during the primary than did during the convention. So if everything else is a wash, I would default towards that if I had to choose a system. What do you think? 753-5868. We'll be back right after this.
Hey, rodeo fans. My name is Sarah Glenn, your 2022 Cache County Fair and Rodeo second attendant. We want you at the Cache County Fair and Rodeo August 10th through the 13th. Wednesday features extreme broncs, barrels, and breakaway roping. Tickets are on sale now and can be purchased at the IFA in North Logan or the Cache County Event Center. Each night the rodeo starts at 8 p.m. Saddle up in your old Western gear on Wednesday as we celebrate 143 years of rodeo tradition. Hope to see you at the Cache County Fair and Rodeo August 10th through the 13th.
Come on out, let's have some fun at the Cache County Fair.
If you've lived here most of your life and never seen the sights of Logan Canyon, then this is your summer. Make plans right now to rent a side-by-side or schedule a horseback ride from Beaver Creek Lodge, the Korean warplane crash site, Ephraim's Grave, Temple Peak, the Paris Ice Caves. They all make great side-by-side rides. Gibson Lakes, Peter Sinks, even into St. Charles or Fish Haven for a raspberry shake. Beaver Creek Lodge of beautiful Logan Canyon offers side-by-side rentals or, if you prefer, horseback rides. See what you've been missing up Logan Canyon. Go to beavercreeklodge.com. Beaver Creek Lodge. Small lodge, big adventure.
Hi, this is Drew Allen with Allen Mortuaries. Over the years, thousands of families have planned ahead with Allen Mortuaries. Planning ahead helps you make informed and thoughtful decisions. It also spares your family the stress of making these decisions under the pressure of time and strong emotions. Allen Mortuaries' secure pre-need trust plan can save you nearly 40% versus other plans. Keep it simple, safe, and secure. Go with the proven choice, Allen Mortuaries. Voted best funeral home in Cache Valley in northern Utah. Allen Mortuaries. Then, now, always.
Tuesday edition, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. We will be breaking down the latest on the COVID insanity. Alex Berenson scheduled to join us as L.A. prepares to re-implement mask mandates and as kids in San Diego are having to wear masks. Plus, Buck.
Biden's White House trying to recover from fist bump gate in Saudi Arabia. What does the economic package look like from Team Biden going forward? We'll talk about that on Clay and Buck.
10 to 1 on News Talk KVNU, 102 FM at 610 AM.
Welcome back to KVN News for the People. That is it for hour one of today's show, but stay tuned. Coming up in hour two, how you or your kids or the whole family can be a park ranger for a day. kind of a cool idea that is going to be happening, and a lot of people here in Cache Valley might want to partake. We'll talk about it right after this here on KVNU Logan.
Covering all the news. Stay with 610 AM and 102.1 FM. Breaking news and stimulating talk. KVNU Logan.